Welcome to The Real Math of Business with Alena Bennett, where you plus this podcast equals better decisions. I'm Alena Bennett, speaker, author, and leadership expert. I work with chief executive officers and chief financial officers really to help them create universally investable companies where people serve people and the math just works. This week, I'm chatting with Harry Marfatia, but first, here is what I'm noticing at the moment, or what we like to call our WINATM. Now, we will have all heard the recent retirement announcement of the great Warren Buffett. I think it's been really interesting watching the headlines, watching the commentary, both internationally and in Australia, around Warren Buffett's success. And, as I've been thinking about it, I really enjoy reading Warren Buffett's letters to his shareholders. I find them really grounded. They're really personal and personable. And quite frankly, I think, they're refreshing because they are not, there's not a letter from a chair, they're not a letter from a CEO that's full of corporate jargon. It's almost like you're hearing from your grandfather. But as I kind of sat back, observed the commentary, and really thought, what are the lessons learned around this great business story, is really the importance of hygiene in business. Now, when I look at Warren Buffett's style of investing, and he doesn't preach his style of investing, but for me, when I look through it, I think that he really focuses on two key things, and that is control and predictability. Now, it's really interesting, or I guess provocative, to use the word predictable in these times, which are so unpredictable. But of course, Warren Buffett's secret is the fact that he is looking at such long-term returns that the very short-term volatility that you and I experience on a day-to-day basis is almost negligible. Right? It's almost irrelevant for people that take a really long-term view of investing or anything, to be perfectly honest. His theory is really based on the compounding effect, the small compounding returns. And so there's, it's sprung a few ideas to me, or sprung a couple of thoughts around, wouldn't it be wonderful in an ideal world if we could all take that long-term view? We know that our boards and our executives profess to take a long-term view, but we know it's those day-to-day decisions that we're presented with every day that really inadvertently force us into making perhaps really short-term focused decisions. But I think coming back to Warren Buffett's approach and this focus on control and predictability, I kind of see, from a control perspective, that is all about the hygiene of the business, right? Is it a good business? Are the controls and the systems designed in such a way where the results are predictable? Is there a good control environment? Are there robust systems and processes in place? It almost brings me back to my audit days, right? And you might say, well, yeah, that's foundational, that's hygiene, Alena, that's not what makes business exciting. Well, of course not. But people like money, and Warren Buffett's been very successful at money. So we go, right, we've got the control element. Then we've got the other thing that he looks at from a predictability perspective is, do we have the people in place that are going to be able to enact, enforce, and encourage the hygiene, right? And I think that's really interesting. And the thought that's come through my mind, because I work with so many CFOs, and CFOs really being the steward of the company's finances, is, if the CEO weren't around, how comfortable would the CEO be happy, or the board be happy to, bring out the CFO to have that conversation with Warren Buffett? In fact, the question that I ask is, if Warren Buffett turned up to your business with $10 million, would he sit in front of you, CFO, and invest in you? Yeah. And I think that's a really challenging question. But I guess for the purposes of this WINATM, because we could talk for hours about this, the question, or the thought that's really gone on in my mind is, even though it's easy to dismiss hygiene, to dismiss the foundations and what we call below the line activity of controllership and team leadership, those things that are not sexy, they're not exciting, they're not particularly strategic. But actually it's made me start to think, can hygiene be a strategic advantage? And I think as I lean more into this reflection on Warren Buffett's investment style, I think the answer is yes. And quite frankly, that's a little bit of a mindset shift for me, because I like strategic thinking. I like a little bit of excitement and I like variety. But hey, we've got this beautiful case study now that tells us maybe that's not all where it's at. So I guess what the thought-provoking question I would like to leave with you is, how can hygiene be a strategic advantage for you and for your business? When you think about the hygiene activities, it might fill you with a feeling of dread, a feeling of boredom. But what if that could be your strategic edge? I think that would be really exciting for you, and I would love to see how that might re-energize you and create new ways of working for you. And now to our chat with Harry Marfatia. Well, welcome. It is so exciting to be able to introduce and welcome my good friend Harry Marfatia to the Real Math of Business podcast with Alena Bennett. Welcome, Harry. Great to have you here.
Thanks, Alena. Thanks for having me, and thanks for inviting. Look forward to the conversation. Yes.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And we had a little chat before we got live, but I suppose it for the benefit of those who are listening or watching, one of the reasons I wanted to really have this conversation with you is, I cast my mind back to when we first met, when we first started working together, and you actually came more prepared to the meeting than I did. You had PowerPoint presentations, you had graphs, you were so strategic, and you thought so intentionally, not only about your career, but about your education, your tertiary and post qualification education, and also which had got to you to where you were. And then you thought again really strategically about your 5-year plan. There are not too many people that approach me and go, here's my 5-year plan. They usually go, can you help me create my 5-year plan? So I was so struck initially by your strategic mindset, knowing that you had this real ambition to grow as an individual, as a professional, but also grow your company. Then as we started working together, and even, we kind of cut to the chase really quickly, what struck me as a beautiful counter to that or complementary to that was to learn how deeply purpose-driven you were. Or you are. So while we're always having business conversations first, you and I always get to a place of, this is why it matters. This is why this is more than just the numbers. This is why what we do counts. And I know how much you bring that to life in everything you do. So I'm so excited to have you here to show you off. So why don't we just get started, and I'll ask you to share a little bit about your career trajectory, your journey to date, where you've worked, what you've loved, maybe what you haven't loved, and we'll just use that as the jumping off point.
Yeah, no. Thanks, Alena. So, look, I think everything that we do, if we do with the purpose and what we call intrinsic motivation, that actually, helps you wake up in the morning, that challenges are everywhere and challenges are getting bigger and better. But I think that intrinsic motivation, where you have a career-driven purpose, as whatever we do in our professional life, we can add a lot of value. And then, we never have boring days. Right. So I always tell that when you add purpose and value to whatever you do, you're never going to have boring days. So absolutely. So the purpose is so important in whatever we do. Number one. Number two, in terms of my career trajectory, I have always been career driven, but I wanted to make sure that I do the right thing by my stakeholders. So when I came to Australia in early 2000, I had the visa to go to USA and Australia in the same week. But two reasons I came to Australia, and that's what, I want people to know me about as well. That's the first thing that I tell people is US, they don't play cricket. They don't know how to hold the cricket bat. And second, of course, at that time I was a student and my dad was paying for it. So I got to be careful about the educational fees. And then educational fees in Australia was slightly lower to US. So these two reasons drove me to Australia. And I selected Melbourne is because of the MCG, and also we use MCG in my current work environment a lot as well, because we have created this MCG environment for our customers and our suppliers to come and see about how we play our game and how we do the business. So I'm very close to MCG by heart. And then in terms of then coming to Australia, 15, 16, 17 years ago, I was washing cars, and now we are having this conversation. So every day is so critical, so important. for me and my family, and I have lived the life with what I can offer to the community, to my customers, to my shareholders, and that way, that keeps me going. In the beginning, if I reflect back from the likes of companies, both domestic and global companies like Origin Energy, Telstra, where I did a lot of financial roles with a little bit of commercial element. But I always think that, finance function should not be only number driven. Right. It should be a business driven. We should be the business stakeholder with our peers. And that's where around 2018, 2019, after completing my CPA studies and CMA studies, I thought that my career was uh, getting limited to finance exposure, not the commercial and business exposure. So after, as preparation is key, as you rightly mentioned, Alena, so I did a lot of preparation. I met many stakeholders, who were in the executive positions, and who were making a lot of business impact, who have done, MBA studies and who also haven't done MBA studies. And then I thought that, or after doing that gap assessment, that I got to do this. And that's when I did the executive MBA from Melbourne Business School. I consider that journey with a 6-month-old baby was really tough. I'm lucky to have my wife and my family support, and they looked after me really well, because apart from your 60 hours a week job, you got to put another 10 to 15 hours into weekend education, waking up early morning. I'm also thankful to all the MBS peers who helped me in my journey, and that actually transformed my career from a financial to a proper commercial person. I learn about culture. I learn about negotiations. I learn about creating the value and maintaining the value. And then look at. I always tell my team as well that you should have two eyes. One eye looking at telescope, and the other eye looking at microscope. And that both eyes should be looking the picture and the vision, with both eyesight. And when you do that, then you are actually creating a 5-year vision for yourself. Now, I know where I want to be in next 5 years. Not every day, every month, I'm making progress, but that keeps reminding me that, all right, where I should be, where I am. So I keep, putting few hours here, few hours there to keep investing into that journey.
Yeah. That's incredible. You've shared so much already. I love that you chose Australia and Melbourne because of your love of cricket. It's no surprise. I should have actually known that already, but obviously, as another cricket freak, I totally back you on that one. So I love that. I would love to know, you said finance should be business driven. Can we just spend a moment on that? Because I think that's it's a very profound statement. Why do we think that is not always the case?
I think because traditionally, look, the world is changing. So traditionally, if I reflect back my journey 10 years ago when I was doing, mid-manager financial roles, it was mainly limited to P&L, balance sheet, and cash flow. And of course, that's like a platform and the foundation. We got to have that rock solid foundation built up in any role that we go into. But then, important question is it going to help you, or is it telling you the story about where you are now and where you want to be in next 5 years time? And now the world is changing so much. Technology is changing every day. Now, if as a finance person, as a CFO, if I'm not managing geopolitical supply chain risks, then I'm not helping my business, not managing existing risks, but also the future risks. If I don't understand what my customer wants, then, how I'm going to create the long-term competitive advantage for the product and the services that we offer. And the third is, if I don't understand my employees well, right? For me, these are the three assets to me. Shareholders, they can wait. If I can make my employees happy, if I can make my customers happy, and if I make my supply chain stakeholders happy, my shareholders are already going to be happy. So different people think different way, but I want to make these three group of people happy, content with what I do first, and then the shareholders will come. So that's how I approach the conversation and everything I do. But to coming back to your question is, that's where the finance person should be thinking, that you are not only a chief finance officer, and we spoke about it so many times, you should be thinking about chief future officer.
Yeah.
what value you are bringing to the future is important, because your 3-year financial modeling, your board reporting, your auditing, your taxation, everything that you do, like your bread and butter, that's so important. And that's also coming back to, that wonderful thing that I learned from you, Alena, about, that different finance roles, from a
Yeah.
firefighter to a game changer. You wouldn't believe, but that is printed out, and it's actually tech in my office. Right? It's about, every time I ask that, you're right, I'm playing this firefighter role, but where I'm going to play the game changer role.
Yes.
I think that's where finance community need to work with people. I really look forward to the days when my salespeople tell me, "Oh, Harry, we want you."
Yeah.
This afternoon we had a meeting. I just went through one contract and I highlighted some contractual points. So the head of procurement from the customer was there, and we had a really concrete discussion that, look, I think if you do this, we are creating a win-win situation, and that win-win situation is a long-term value proposition, which we all want. Right? So that's where we need to s- step in into our day-to-day finance function. Absolutely, don't drop
Yes.
your ball towards that. That's your probably what I call microscope. But when you
Yes.
look at the telescope,
Yeah.
you look at about how you are setting up your platform now, that can give you competitive advantage in a long run.
And I really love what you said. We've got the two eyes, one for the microscope, one for the telescope. We keep our eye on the picture and the vision as well. You then talked about how we need to be thinking about value. What value are we bringing? And that value doesn't just come in numbers, it comes with the happiness of our staff, our customers, our supply chain, right? So, with all of that in mind, it sounds like a lot, Harry. So, if I want to kind of zoom out a bit and go, when it comes to business success, what are the ingredients of business success given your experience?
Yes, I think the success of the business is any business, any industry. And I worked in so many different industries. I worked in IT, in telco, in pharmaceutical, and now in retail/textile. I think the solution driven mindset is very key.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Problems are always there. I always tell the jobs are existing because problems are there. But if we have solution driven mindset, and if you think about, all right, have I given this angle to this problem? Have I looked at that way? Then half of your solution is already found out. So for any business, that is so important that you create the culture where people are seeking for solution. That's the first key. The second success of the business, and I think this is so relevant to in Australia, is our productivity standards are reducing.
Mm.
Now we always, I believe that we always talk about, oh, dropping in interest rate will change the economic environment. Of course, that will happen. The retail will grow. Overall capex investment will come in. Technological investment will come in. But are we really creating the productive workforce? So that is the second key reason of any business success.
Yeah.
Now, even if you look at from the statistical point of view, we as a country, we have done really well from early 2000 to about 2015, 2016. We have survived really well in the GFC. But if I look at last few years, our productivity compared to you and our peers, in our Western world and also other developed nations, it's dropping down. And how we can create the productive work environment, there is no right or wrong answer to that. I think that's where the solution driven mindset is important, and how you can bring technology to the solution is so important. So I always tell my team that, from a finance point of view, have this golden rule. If you are spending more than 30% on time on reporting, then we are not doing something right. Yes, when you take something new, it takes time, but overall, the rule of thumb is 30% of time on reporting and 70% time on analysis. And when we talk about the analysis, partnering with the business, doing the research and development where the industry is heading, doing the research and development on how our competitors are doing, that's when we start adding value to the business. And when we create this culture, we are moving from a finance services provider to a business services provider. And when we create this culture, we are giving this ingredient to the business that everyone around us need to think from that point of view.
It's so fascinating, Harry, and it wasn't part of this particular conversation, but you said, the finances or the finance element, that's like the must do. It's like the at the foundation. It's the baseline, right? You must have it, right? So we kind of set that scene, a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
And then when we said, well, what drives business success? You must have mentioned culture about 3 times. You didn't mention money once. And I'm fascinated by that. How does that work? So if we go, okay, you need a foundation of good finances, but then actually what drives business is the culture you create, the culture of a solution-driven mindset, a culture that enables people to be more productive and create new solutions to unlock that productivity, a culture to adopt and adapt to the new technology demands. And you said the culture of the balance of reporting versus analysis and value-add work.
Yeah.
Help me out by understanding finance here. Culture is the thing that drives business success. You said, actually, if I do all of that, shareholders will be happy. Is it finance first or culture first? How does that look in your mind? Like, what's the flow? I'm curious.
Yeah, look, I think there is no particular flow here. I think it's a parallel exercise, and not every time it works, right? So that's why sometime depending on the situation of the business you are in, and depending the problem that you are handling on. But I always believe that culture should come first, right? The career-driven culture, and I always tell even my leadership team that we want to create the environment where people come to our offices for career, not for job, right?
Yeah.
So when you come to that, then you are parking the money question aside. If I'm career driven, then the money will follow. And look at your business, great example, right? Look at our relationship for last 6-7 years. We never discuss commercials, right?
Really?
That's not even second thing. That's the last thing.
Yeah.
We always
Yeah.
discuss about how we can help each other in terms of
That's
making
right.
whatever we do with the best capability that we have.
Yes.
And then the money will eventually follow. So that's sort of, thinking I have, that, creating a culture of solution mindset, hungry people want to get somewhere in their life.
Mm.
And then eventually, when you have that intrinsic motivation, again, coming back to what I say in the
Yes.
beginning of the call, that, if it is money driven, that, all right, we pay all our resources, the market pays salary. Fine. But my offer to them is, number one is, are you going to grow with us? Do you really want to grow with us? Fine. Are you going to be happy with us? Right? In 10 years down the track, whether we work together or not, if we see each other on the street, right, we're going to give a hug and say that, oh, what a fantastic time we had. Right? So that reflection thing, and then the money will be there. Money will come. Right? So that's where money is important, don't get me wrong.
Yes.
But if I select anything that I do in my life, money comes last. The first is my growth, how happy I'm going to be professionally and personally, and then the money element would come.
I think it's so provocative as a group chief financial officer, and with your breadth of experience, it's so provocative to hear. It could be perceived to be so provocative to hear a chief financial officer to say, don't really care about the money, right? It's fascinating, isn't it? And I think that's a real reflection of how the role has changed. But also, like you say, business success does not fundamentally come from the numbers. I just think that's fascinating. Then the money will come, the numbers will follow. And you and I both know that's exactly right. Numbers are a lag indicator. It's the stuff that happens before that.
Any business that I worked in past, I'm so happy when that business is doing well, because I always believe that I had some sort of input in that business.
Yes.
So I think, so that's the experience that I believe, that I think once we set up our values, we got what brand promise that we give to our stakeholders, we should always live by that. And if any of our practice comes with the compromise, and sometimes it happens, that's okay, it's life, it happens. Then as long as we have a roadmap plan in place, and we continuously keep bringing that as a senior leader, that guys, yes, we are right now looking at slight adjustment practices to our values, but we have a long-term strategy and plan that we're going to address that, and I think we are making the right choice as the business. So that's the only thing that I'm thinking of. Our current brand promise to the market is right product, right price, and our product always on time. So now as a finance person, my first management report should tell about are we living up to brand promise or not.
Yeah.
Our KPIs and our reporting standards are giving that is. It's not P&L, balance sheet and cash flow. Our performance is aligning with our brand promise and our values. So that's where I think, again, finance versus business discussion comes in about how we are stepping in to help business navigate through this interesting phase.
I can imagine there'd be people listening or watching this going, huh? A chief financial officer is your anchor back to the values. Harry, you are, as the chief financial officer, challenging and saying, hang on, are we living our values? Are we practicing what we preach? Are we, we've got these 3 pillars of our business. Are we living by those? I just think, gosh, how fortunate for the business landscape to have a CFO that will not only make sure you stay off the front cover of a paper, that you've got the foundations right so that you can be around not only today but tomorrow, but that will ensure that your business is a good corporate citizen and will contribute to the community in a way that you hold out on your website that you say you will.
Correct.
And if I think about what you said, if you do all of those things, if you keep your staff happy, your customers happy, and your supply chain happy, your shareholders are going to be happy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It
And
sounds
again,
so simple, but
yeah.
so effective.
And also, I think one thing I would add to that is, whatever we do in whatever field we do, finance, business, whatever we do, is it going to help business create the long-term sustainable competitive advantage? That is also very important. I don't want to do something that I do it now by compromising few things, and it's going to come and bite me again in few weeks' time or few months' time. So yes, it's hard to put that into practice when we are working on a very tight deadline. But this is what, this afternoon is a great example. My boss came, no, this is, I promise for this, right? Yes. So let me deliver that. And that's exactly what it is, the right thing at the right time with the long-term advantage, sustainable advantage to our stakeholders. And again, when it comes to stakeholder, when we start putting our customers, employees, and our supply chain people first, then shareholders are going to be happy. Actually, if a shareholder would say that, all right, that's fine. My PE ratio is going to look good, right? When these three things will happen.
That's it. That's it. I mean, we could talk for hours on this, Harry, and I know we have over the years. We have, and I know we could do that. But you've given us so many gems in terms of big picture principles that I think, no doubt, we can all kind of take and go, yes, I want to borrow this from Harry. I want to borrow this from Harry. I love to make things practical. I love to conceptualize, but I always like to land a plane and make things practical. And for anyone who's listening or watching this, the thought that's going through my head that I would love to hear from you, Harry, is if I'm a chief executive officer or a board director and my CFO does not think like you, but I want my CFO to think like you, what should the CEO or board question ask of their CFO? Yeah, so that's question number one. The second question is to flip it. If I'm a CFO and I believe, like I'm listening to you going, Harry, you're preaching to the choir. I want to be like you. I believe all of those same things, but my CEO or my board chair won't listen. If I'm that CFO, what can I ask the CEO or board chair to stimulate or to ignite this conversation with them?
Yeah. So I always tell, and this is not something new. I always have been telling myself for last so many years. Do you have a fear of losing, or you have a frustration of not winning?
Tell me about that.
Yeah. So as a CFO, and this is my message to what has worked for me, is I don't have fear of losing, even my job. But if I don't win, then I'm frustrated. So that's how I drive the value, right? And that's a two-way conversation comes in. Even when we bring blind spots discussions to our CEOs, that, hey, look, mate, watch it. This is your blind spot, right? And I keep bringing it, even though it's annoying, but I keep bringing it because I know that I'm helping him or her to move from fear of losing to frustration of not winning, right? So when we set up our plan, I think let's take that fear of losing out. There is only one thing here in the life, and that is learning. There is nothing called losing because we all give 100% of our efforts. Right. So we are not going to lose. We're going to learn. Right. So I think that's very important. Even with board of directors, when you put a business case in first, of course you don't put the artificial business case, right? And that's where the first fundamental of your finance platform, that you develop the platform that gives you the realistic assessment. And when you take the realistic, when you have created that platform, then you are sure that any numbers or any story or any business case that you produce to your stakeholders is gonna be backed up by your own due diligence that you are expected to perform anywhere. And then when you do that, then you come to the conversation whether you should do that or you should not do that. And if you should not do that, then as a CFO, your role is that if it is not now, I understand why not now, but it has to happen again in future, because I have vetted this, I have done this, and we got to do this. Otherwise, in 6 or 9 months time, we're going to have frustration of not winning. Yeah. So that's how I make it very simple.
Do you know what? I love that. Do you have it? So I'll just reframe it to make sure I've got it. Do you have a fear of losing, or do you have a frustration of not winning?
Correct.
And I could see how, if I were a CEO or a board, asking that question of the CFO, should it inspire the conversation or some of the thinking that you've just had? And then vice versa, if I'm a CFO asking myself that question, I'm listening to you saying, I need to get rid of the losing mindset. It's all learning. And I need to get into a winner's mindset and have the courage to do things like, share blind spots to my CEO, show them what's possible, and really hold companies to account to, if not now, when.
Correct.
That is such a gem to finish on. I love that. I think you said you have something of mine on your wall. I might have to have something of yours on my wall, and it will be that question. And I am going to close before I close and tell people how they can connect with you. I am going to be slightly cheeky and ask, how do you deal with a cricket draw then?
As long as you have fun on the field, everything counts. Put it in. Put it in.
I love it. I love it. Hey, Harry, thank you so much for your gems. I have learned and always continue to learn from every single conversation that you and I have. So I'm so grateful for your time today. If people want to connect with you or to learn more about the work you've done and the leadership ethos and philosophy that you bring to all of the work that you do, how would be the best way for people to find you?
I think the best, So first of all, thank you for the opportunity and good luck to this fascinating thing that you are doing. And I'm so thankful for you for the finance and business community that the platform like this exists, Alena. So great job. Hats off to you and your team. In terms of reaching out to me, the LinkedIn would be the best platform to reach out. And I'm always checking my LinkedIn, so I'm always there. All right.
Thank you so much, Harry. That was so good. I'm so inspired by you. And so I continue to watch your career journey and what you do every day for your company, your people, and the communities. I'm so inspired. So well done. And thank you again for today.
Thanks, Alena.
And what a great chat with Harry Marfatia. It was so good. And this leads us right into our listener question. And don't forget, if you want to submit a listener question, you can leave a comment on YouTube or Spotify, and we'll hopefully get it into a future episode. So to today's listener question, it comes from Kara, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Kara. So the question is, hi, Alena, loving the podcast so far. What do you do to stay on top of the latest news and trends? I find it all a little overwhelming at the moment, and other than listening to this podcast, I struggle to know what to listen to and what to act on. How do you stay on top of it all? Thank you, Kara. Kara, this is such a great question. And actually, I was asked the exact same thing in a coaching session yesterday. I'm working with a client at the moment. He's an executive in his organization, and he literally asked the same thing. What should I be listening to? What should I be reading? How can I make sure I'm staying on top of everything? So the first thing to know, Kara, is you don't need to stay on top of everything, because you actually can't. There is so much out there at the moment. It is overwhelming. We know that the algorithms and everything is designed simply to distract you, and that's not helpful. So the advice I gave to my client yesterday afternoon, I think is relevant, or might be relevant to answer your question. And I said, listen, you are already out there. You are on LinkedIn, you are on social media, you are scanning the news, you are listening to podcasts. So your awareness is already quite broad. I said you also are operating or working in an organization that has certain mandates or is on a journey, a growth journey for this particular organization. I said it's a really exciting growth journey. And also for him, I said, you're also personally on a very exciting journey. So I said, I don't want to give you a random book, the latest business book, because quite frankly, most business books are full of business jargon that is just going to add to the distraction and the overwhelm that is probably already going on for you right now, Cara, because information is everywhere. So what I said to him is I said, you're already out there. You're already doing the scanning of the landscape, which is exceptional. So, Cara, if you are not already tapped in to those areas of news, of you're already listening to podcasts, to the relevant social media platforms that are relevant for you, you could do that with a scan. So there's a classic, there's a great podcast called The Squiz that does the news in 10 minutes, right? I personally listen to that because, I don't want to fill myself with all of the information or all of the activities that are going around in the world, because I have a personal belief that a lot of that is not useful, but it is important to stay in touch. Then what I would ask yourself, and this is what I asked my client yesterday, is I said, listen, you're on a personal journey, in pursuit of something for you as a human. I said, you're also on a growth journey with your organization, both to grow the organization and your own career growth within that organization. I said, use that to guide where you dive into. So do the scan, but recognize that the purpose of the scan is only to help you decide where to go deep on. And I said to him, and I'll say to you, trust your intuition and judgment that you're going deep on the right places. There is just too much out there to stay on top of it all. That is just, a pursuit to failure. So please don't feel pressured to do that, because you can't. So just trust your awareness, make sure you've got that breadth of awareness, trust your judgment, and go deep where you need to. And what I said to him is I said, the awareness will actually stretch your imagination, which might also stretch your goals, might stretch your ambitions, and might stretch your growth opportunities. And then that creates the gap. And that gap, closing that gap, is you fill with the relevant podcasts, the relevant books, the relevant trainings, whatever those resources are, you use to fill in the gap so that you bridge from awareness through to growth. So that's kind of what I'd say with that. Be aware, get clear on your personal journey, your business or professional journey, and use that awareness to identify where you need to go deep. The other thing that I will say just to close out, and it's a little bit of a cheeky anecdote, I'm a big fan of the great Robin Sharma, and he always encourages having more books that you can possibly read, because you are intentionally surrounding yourselves with the great minds of the past. And so, I certainly surround myself with way more books than I can ever read. I do try and get to as many as I can, but I am comforted, not pressured, by the reality that I will never get through all of them. So, Cara, I hope that's helpful. I think that's an excellent question, and you're obviously on a journey of some description. So I really wish you luck on that journey, and please stay in touch, and thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to The Real Math of Business with Alena Bennett. If you liked this episode, remember to subscribe for more content and stay on top of the real math of business. I'm Alena Bennett. Thank you for listening.